Returning overseas now, the Chinese President Xi Jinping will visit Kazakhstan next week in his first trip abroad since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Joining us live from Taipei is the Australian's North Asia correspondent, Will Glasgow. Will, good to see you after 3 years stuck in China. Why Kazakhstan?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, almost 3 years, from Xi Jinping being in that COVID bunker there. Look, he's picked Kazakhstan partly because, well, one of the top reasons is it's somewhere he can go where there's not going to be huge protests against him. Kazakhstan's run by an autocratic leader who is friendly with China, and his economy, or Kazakhstan's economy, is very dependent on China. China's its neighbour, it's huge and growing neighbour. So, yeah, Kazakhstan's a place where Xi can go. The government of Kazakhstan will make sure a big fuss is made of him, make sure it's safe, create a COVID bubble for him to walk into. And the other thing about Kazakhstan is it looms large in Chinese foreign policy. It was in Kazakhstan almost a decade ago where Xi Jinping announced what we now call the Belt and Road Project, his signature foreign policy idea, this huge infrastructure project, which began in Central Asia, so with lots of different Chinese-backed projects in Central Asia, but now is all around the world. I mean, it's the Belt and Road Project you have throughout the Pacific Islands, and, when the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi was going through in recent months through the Solomon Islands, PNG, everywhere on that tour, there's Belt and Road branded projects. So she's going back to where it all began, where he gave his speech almost 10 years ago. And this, of course, is happening this trip to Kazakhstan will just be weeks before the Party Congress meeting in Beijing, where he's going to get his third term as China's leader. And so this is a chance for him to go on a kind of a victory tour in a very constrained, organised, controlled part of the world for China.
And so on the victory tour, are we expecting that Xi might have a rendezvous anywhere with Vladimir Putin? Could that be on the cards?
Well, yeah, the next stop, so he goes to Kazakhstan, and then after that he goes to Uzbekistan the next day. And there's the meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation, a China-created international organisation, which includes Russia. And yes, Vladimir Putin will be there. So this is really pointed, right? So the two last met, if you remember, at the Beijing Olympics. Vladimir Putin was Xi Jinping's guest of honour at that. They announced their no limits pact on hours before the Winter Olympics began, and what we now know is days before Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine. So they're going to meet on the sidelines of this meeting next week. Again, a really pointed meeting, their first in-person meeting since that Beijing Winter Olympics one, but happening more than 6 months after that war in Ukraine was begun by Vladimir Putin, and as it rages on, and despite attempts by America and others, by our new Prime Minister, Albanese, have tried to get China to put pressure on Russia to stop that. Instead, that war seems to have brought Russia and China, or at least President Xi and President Putin, closer together. And so, yeah, those images next week, I mean, they'll be beamed across China's propaganda internally to show that Xi Jinping has big, powerful friends. And internally, that will be the message around the world, especially in Australia and in America and Japan and all around the world, of course, in Ukraine. They'll see those images of Xi with Putin very differently.
Now, Will, tell us about the latest COVID lockdowns in China in late 2022. It's just remarkable that this is still happening. We can all feel the pain that those residents who are being impacted by it must be going through at the moment. Just how bad is the current outbreak there?
Well, it's, by Australian standards, the numbers are nothing. I mean, there's something like 1,500 official cases across the whole of China with 1.4 billion people. So the COVID numbers are very small, but the policy response to it is just staggering, right? That China, this is really sad for people in China. They're coming up to the Mid-Autumn Festival this weekend, and most of the country, once again, won't be allowed to travel, even domestically, for this holiday. They won't be able to see their friends and family if they don't live in the same city as them. Something like towards 100 million people are in a state of lockdown across China. Chengdu is the epicenter. Now, for the poor almost 20 million residents of Chengdu, they're in a lockdown right now. They've just had wildfires raging around them. They're at the epicenter of the drought. It's, well, still ongoing in there. And they had an earthquake earlier in the week, which killed more than 50 people. So, yeah, a lot of very sad, frustrated people in China who are still caught up in the world's toughest, strictest COVID measures. And yeah, once again, it's going to get in the way of another domestic holiday, the Mid-Autumn Festival. But yeah, look, again, this is all knotted up with Chinese politics. Until Xi Jinping gets this third term in a month's time, the COVID zero policy will remain and will be very strictly enforced. A lot of people in China are hoping once he gets that 5-year term, things can relax a bit. But look, let's wait and see what happens after it. I think there's a bit of wish fulfillment there, but hopefully, life gets a bit more relaxed for people in China after that.
Gosh, 100 million people in lockdown, just extraordinary. Well, Glasgow, always appreciate your insights and analysis. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.